Hi YouTube, well back with the Peugeot again today because only just finished the discs and the brakes. Had a few weeks of it, got the MOT done, all good, and then suddenly I started noticing a grinding noise, kind of like metal churring and grinding, and it obviously can only be a moving part. So I looked inside the engine bay. I've not got a lot of experience with cars, so I had a look online, and it appears to be the bearing. So I phoned around a little bit, and the quotes were if it's just a straight bearing between 200 and 300. I like to give these things a go and obviously add to my skill set in case anything else goes wrong in the future. I've actually bought some tools, which I'll show you a bit later, that are about £200 in total. So if it all goes well, then it's obviously financially better off to fix it yourself, but these things never do. But you can't really put a price on investing in your own skills. So it's something that I want to do and I want to feel like I've done. And I have fixed a few things with cars before. This is probably the most complex thing. I have taken the wishbone off the bottom of the wheel before, an old Peugeot. Done a few alternators, power steering pumps, but all fairly simple. But this one I needed some specialist tools for, a press to get the bearing in and the bearing housing assembly in. But I'll show you that in a second. The first thing to see is obviously, the first thing to diagnose would be a real grinding, whirring kind of noise. It's very distinctive. It's very hard to describe, but you can't really get away from the fact that it's a bearing, and it gets kind of significantly worse as you drive it. So it gets to a point where you just can't drive. It's too dangerous to drive. The second thing to do is that then the ABS light comes on. Now, if any car with an ABS sensor on it, because the wheel's kind of juddering, it thinks there's a fault. So I got the ABS warning light on probably the last day that I drove this. Before I diagnosed what it was, I had a look and jacked it up, and you can clearly see this bearing's completely gone. So this is all, I've loosened it to raise it, but essentially these are still tight. I mean, you've got all that play, all in the bearing. Driving at any speed is dangerous and it's going to cause significant damage to other areas of the car. So that's obviously going to activate the ABS warning light. Not good at all. So I'm going to take this off. I've got a bit of Christmas leave, so I'm able to leave this here for a little bit while I do this slowly. If it all goes well, it shouldn't be more than 3-4 hours, I'm told. But there's always nuts that round off and won't come off, and I've got a bit of time to do that and do this slowly. So I'm going to take this off, take the discs and the calipers off. I've got a reverse hammer, take off the housing assembly, and then I've got to wait for a press to arrive to push the bearing out and push it back in again. I'll show you all this. I'll show you the tools I've got shortly, and I actually went for the bearing and the housing assembly because you do this work, you might as well take the two off together. And there's an extra step involved if you don't buy the housing assembly of taking this collet off, which I didn't want to do, but I'll show you all that in a second. But this is just to show you a very clear indication that the bearing's gone. No more locking nuts because they're all removed. I hated those. They took hours to get off. I was going to steal these wheels anyway, but before we get started, I thought I'd show you my new purchase. This is the 200-piece set Halford Advanced, which I got for 180 quid actually. Got a bit of a discount, got it on its lowest point. Lifetime guarantee, obviously haven't been used at all yet. Very shiny, so looking forward to use that. But anyway, first job, I'm going to use this purely because this has a T55 that you have to put in a socket, and I've already got one. So to get the caliper off, there's two 55 torque bit nuts just at the back there, one at the bottom. So that's the first thing to take this caliper off. Now these are quite loose because I took these off only a few weeks ago. You take the caliper off, you want to hang it up on something, most likely the coil suspension there, because you've got this hydraulic line. So if that's going to be kind of suspended or hanging, eventually it's going to cause damage to these lines. So just a simple, you can get like a little hook, but all I've got is one of these little straps, and that can just stay there whilst you finish the job. So next thing is the disc, which is going to be two retaining nuts, and then that should just come off. Obviously that's held in place by the wheel nuts in 4 spaces. These are just retaining nuts, quite small ones. And they're going to be, 2 seconds, that's going to be a T30, those, T30, to get those off. As you can see, I've got a bit of copper grease in there, it's good stuff. Whenever you take anything apart, I'll put some copper grease on it, just so when I come back to it, it's not too hard to take off. Just retaining screws or nuts. Obviously the actual majority of the the force is going to be through the nuts on the wheel. It's got 4 there, so don't need much force at all on those. So it's time to get the wheel hub nut off. I've got a pack of impact rated socket set, and having a look, it appears to be best fit is the 30. There's a little bit of play in there, but it should be okay. Now, what's interesting, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points on this, so that should stop rounding off, because when you get a 12 point or anything higher, it tends to hold on the corners, which can round off, whereas as you can see, these are hollowed out a little bit, which a lot of Halfords do, which means it's holding on the flat surface, so that should prevent rounding off. Now, I've never actually used one of these before. I was going to use a torque bar, and would involve my partner getting in and putting the brake on, and obviously putting a lot of force through it. I'm told these are on super tight, and I'm always worried about those kind of scenarios because I just feel like I'm going to round nuts off. I've had some bad experience in the past, but a friend of mine has lent me his Milwaukee impact wrench. Now, this should make the job a bit easier, because obviously rather than just kind of consistent force, which is possibly going to require a lot of force and could round off the nut, which I don't think is going to happen with these, because their designs take quite a lot of force, but because you're impacting it, the vibration should loosen a little bit, and hopefully it should all come off okay. But I've never used one before. Let's give it a go. Oh, brilliant. Look how easy that was. So I don't actually have a need for one of these. I'm told it makes the job pretty tough without it, but that was pretty good. This is a worry. I have never had this off before. I've never had a reason to have it off, and my partner's had this car from new, and this looks absolutely knackered. I don't know what could have caused that. I'll get some advice about that. I mean, I'm assuming it's been held on by those last few rings there. No idea how that's happened. Been to the garage, and I don't know how that has been so stripped. It's going to need a whole new drive shaft, which I've ordered. I think I was quoted 150, but I found one for 111 that I got myself. I'm pretty sure once I've taken all this off, which the plan was anyway, this should just slide out with maybe a circlip or something similar, but most of the work is what I plan to do anyway, so I'm going to give that a go, but that'll come later in the video. If you see the video, it means it has worked out. If not, I'm just not going to post it. So I don't know how that's happened, because obviously the threads in there are fine, but the outer threads are completely chewed up in the nuts and in the axle as well. I'm assuming just the bearing has just kind of allowed it to move, and it's crunched on the nut. Why some have gone and some haven't, I'm not quite sure, but it's going to have to be the bearing was driven on, and it's just basically completely destroyed those threads. Now, what I was told, that you can potentially, if it's not too bad, re-thread it with a tap and die, but these are completely nailed. And for the sake of 110 pounds plus your safety, I'm just going to replace that, so it'll be a full job. So the next stage anyway is to remove this this bearing housing, well, not the housing, the hub that goes into the bearing. The only thing that really holds it on is the axle nut, which has come off. So it looks to be, you use a slide hammer, and that should come out. So hopefully it's as easy as it is on the videos on YouTube, and that's the next step done. This is just a fairly cheap kit from Amazon, about 40 quid I think, OMT. It's a slide hammer, but it is also a dent puller, so do a few jobs there. So that is the next step. I would say this didn't fit perfectly. It's slightly too narrow for this protrusion here. I'm not going to go and send it back and get another one. I mean, who knows if the next one would fit. I'm sure there's some dimensions on there, but it's enough to do the job. It's probably a very universal kit, but it's in there fairly tight. It doesn't need to be locked on too tight really. It's going to do its job. So that just about fit there. So you can see this has gone on as tight as it needs to be. This bar threads in with a little locking nut there, and it should just slide out. So fingers crossed. does appear to be moving. The threads that you could just about see have kind of gone, so you have to kind of get a marker to see it going. It's obviously been in for a while, so it seems to be doing the job. There you go. See in there. I mean, what I have seen on videos, and I've really got time to do this today, is you would, and I will do this, but make a decision about what you're going to release. Obviously not to take out the tracking of the steering. Probably going to take this ball joint off here and then move this open, but people take this axle out first. Obviously there's a bit more effort than I've seen on other videos, but you could push this out first and then take it out. But either way, it's going to, it's supposed to be in there fairly tight, so it wasn't too bad. This is obviously the old bearing. That is obviously could never be reused should you want to fix another part of the car. If you remove that out, because it's under so much force, you have to replace that. It's a different kind of bearing to the one I've bought. Part of the reason I ordered a new housing is because this is now part of the bearing. This has come off. So you'd have to basically, what I've seen, use a Dremel or some sort of impact air tool, and you get that off by either doing a cut or pushing it off, because that's part of the bearing. And that's obviously broken from there. But for the sake of £20, I've ordered a new one of these, just to save that. I wanted to remove an extra step, so that's actually part of the bearing that needs to be removed. So yeah, that's the next step done. The next thing that we need to do on this job is remove this steering arm. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can move this knuckle out to pull the drive shaft through the drive shaft assembly, so that we can pull the bearing out. Also got to replace this this drive axle anyway, so the first stage is obviously just going to remove this, take the rust off, because as you can see when I undo this nut, basically all that rust doesn't get impacted into the nut. It will initially turn, then it gets stuck, and I've had that before, and then all you can do is go up and down with an impact wrench to loosen it. So best to clean that as much as I can, so I'm going to spend some time doing that now. There is a special tool you can get for popping this out, which is about £17. Now I do like buying my tools, but I've got to draw the line somewhere, so a lot of mechanics, you're just going to give it a tap of a hammer. I'm not opposed to buying the tool for this one job, but I'm going to give it a go with a hammer first to drop it out. Obviously not kind of to damage the top, but to give it a bang there. Should that fail, I'll just get this tool. It's just a separator, ball joint separator, which you can get for about 17 quid. You get cheap ones on Amazon, but I'll get one from Halfords, I think. So once that comes out, I can move this knuckle out, I can push this through and suspend it until I'm ready to do that part, and I'll be taking the bearing out, replacing all of this, and then replacing the drive axle. So that's the next stage, to get all that nice and clean. Hopefully it'll come off nice and easy, hopefully, fingers crossed, and then we can give it a tap and it'll pop out. Best laid plans and all that, but let's give it a go. Penetrating oil just to kind of help loosen the nut. It's a 16mm socket. As you can tell these are 6-pointed sockets, so this should help with any rounding off issues. Fairly nice and tight fit there. Not any issues at all. All in the prep. Always good to kind of give it some lubricating oil and take off that rust. If I hadn't taken that rust off now, it'd start to bind up. So that already just dropped, just with a hammer. So you can get a little bearing remover or puller that will push that down, but I've seen a lot of videos where you can just use a hammer that's literally caused no damage whatsoever. I guess when you get a really stuck one it might be worth it, but that's like £18 for that, so there's no need to get that. So that is all good. So sometimes it's not good to buy tools. The old ways are the best sometimes. Even though I cleaned it, my threads did have a little bit of gunk in it, so it's gone up. It wouldn't come off any further, come back down again, just cleaning off this gunk. And then I've just got a torque bit in the top that's going to hold the track rod end in place as I undo this nut, but it's needed a little bit of work, a little bit of penetrating oil to go up and down to remove the gunk, as you can see, and it should pop out. So that wasn't too bad. I definitely think the penetrating oil makes all the difference, because dry muck and rust is a lot harder to move than obviously when it's got oil in it. So there's a little bit of working up and down there, but not a problem at all. Just take your time to clear it, and a bit of penetrating oil. I probably could have cleared it a little bit more, but no problem at all there. There we go. So now I can move this knuckle out of the way. My tool has only just arrived, my press to press this out. So I'll push this out. I'll show you my new tool to remove the bearing, and then we are almost there. The next stage is try and get this drive shaft out of this knuckle. So I think it's a bit fiddly. What I don't want to do is remove everything, because obviously there's various bits of alignment and tracking, etc. So I'm going to try and do it as minimal as I can, minimal disturbance. Obviously I could pop this out, I could pop that out, but then I'm going to have some tracking issues. So I'm going to give it a go, just having removed the steering arm. I think it's going to have to be, people have done it, it's a bit fiddly, but I think hopefully I can push this in and get that out. That's pretty tight. I'm really hoping not to have to remove anything else, so I might have to go to a video to see what other people did. A bit of play with this, and I think there's no choice. I'm going to have to take off this bottom wishbone, which shouldn't be any part of the tracking. Obviously there's no kind of adjustment there. It just might be that I might need a ballpoint removing tool to kind of push that out, but I've seen people use crowbars, etc. So I'm going to clean that up, take that off, and I think there's no choice. I mean, even at its extremes, I'm pushing this in, that shaft's not going to go any further into the engine. I'm making my life harder by not taking this off, so that is the next step, to clean this off and take this off. That's going to be a 16, deep socket, really nice fit there. A bit tight there, so I could just force it off, but I've had bad experiences before with getting rust in the threads, and it gets harder and harder and harder. So it's going to take my time in and out. I think it's harder there, so I'm going to get back in again. In a little way. Okay. Even if the nut is off, it's still going to be under Got a lot of tension, so just a socket on the other side. So deep socket 17 for the back. Well, the nut's obviously off, but the bolt seized slightly. I still can get some turn on it, but I'm just going to use my special key to get it off, and then I can start working out whether I can pull this down. I've seen quite a few videos where people have got very specialist tools to do this. I'm hoping, again, not to have to buy one. So I've got a crowbar. I'm not going to force anything too much, but I'm going to give it a go without committing to buying anything, which I'll show you in a second. So I put it on a low setting. I didn't want to break the bolt. So be careful. Be careful tapping that because I don't want to break the threads, but it seems to be doing the trick. There we are. That's out. Next issue is just popping this down. Obviously, you can get a ball joint puller, which can go in there. Some are quite cheap, which is probably more for a tie rod end, about 18 quid. Some are 40 quid. I don't really want to spend that for one tool. I've seen some people have a chain and then an air impact pushing that down, but equally some people used to use a bit of leverage. So I'm going to give this a go with this. Now, I'm just going to see how we do. See, things we do, quite a lot of leverage on this, and what I could end up doing is bending this part. This is quite... You can see here is that this isn't very strong metal. I could easily bend this. So I'm going to be a little bit cautious with this. Don't think it's going to work. So it's either going to be look at the tool or see what other people advise, but I mean that's going to easily bend. Some of the videos I've looked at, these have 3 nuts you can take off, but this one's they're kind of they're sealed in. It's a permanent unit. It's nothing you can do about that. So I'm not going to push this too much. Well, maybe. So I can maybe pull it up a little bit. I mean, part of the issue what might be is that obviously because there's no wheel on this, the suspension's pushing this wishbone down as far as possible. So what I'm having to do really, that's not going to go down any further. I'm having to lift the suspension, which is going to be just going to go up and down, isn't it? And if I really force it, it's going to bend that metal, and that's just going to go up, and then unless I move it out the way and over, it's going to go down. So it might be that I have to get this tool that I was looking at, but I'm not really going to push this any further because I don't think it's the right way to do it. So back to the drawing board and I'll come back with you what I decide. Obviously we weren't able to remove or separate this ball joint from this steering knuckle just with a crowbar. I'm sure, you know, if you had a bit of experience you probably could manhandle it, but I didn't want to give a risk of breaking or bending anything. So I have taken the plunge and bought some new tools. These are pickle forks, so ball joint separators that can be used for tie rod ends, ball joints, pitman arms, and similar kind of any kind of application where you've got to remove some sort of similar knuckle. They're 3 different types, and you've got as you can see here, you get a striking handle, which I'll be using, or you can use it for an air gun. So I believe probably this middle set, as you can see, they all thread on, and I've never done this before, but I'm gonna have to commit and try and separate it that way. So I'm gonna give it a few strikes. feel it moving. Just things I'm pushing against the suspension here, so not sure if there's a better way to do it or not. It moving there. That didn't seem to be working, because I think what's happening is that the suspension is obviously pushing fully down with this not being able to go down any further. So all I'm really doing is trying to separate by pushing against the suspension. Obviously there's quite a significant amount of force there. So what I'm going to do is raise the suspension, which will then naturally push down on that ball socket, and then hopefully a little bit of extra force with my pickle fork will separate. So that's what I'm going to do if this is going to reach. So I've got a block of wood underneath this. Raise it. You can see the amount of force pushing down that suspension. I was trying to use that pickle fork to push up. Let's go for the full jack. It wasn't kind of working before, so I'm going to give this a go now. It's never simple in cars, is it? Come in, I'm just a bit nervous about the whole thing, so I'm going to lower it a little bit because I think the jack's slightly the wrong way. You can see it's come in. A lot tougher than expected. On the videos on YouTube, they just pop right out. So if this is undone, it's just sitting on there. Obviously got all the force of the suspension above it, but it's getting there. Just a lot harder than expected. Yeah, I'm struggling with this because I've got a bit of a gap there, but it's just not popping out. And I don't understand why, because it's just in there. Obviously the bolt's undone. It should just pop out. So I'm not going to force it too much more. I might do a bit more research. I think I've noticed I actually left this pinch bolt in. I took the nut off but just left it in thinking it wouldn't make much difference, but it was under a lot of pressure, and it's actually taking that out is actually stripped out the thread. So I think maybe that was kind of keeping it pinched, just due to the amount of forces involved. So I've taken that out, and what I'm going to do is just use a chisel to try and open this up a little bit and see if that makes a difference. Seems to have made all the difference. Just taking that pinch bolt out, giving it a bit of a bang with the chisel just to loosen it up, it seems to make quite a bit of difference. So it should hopefully come out fairly soon. So I've looked at some videos, and it seems to be everyone struggles with this ball joint on this control arm. In theory, that should just drop down, but it's obviously over the years and a bit of rust, etc., it's going to be a bit tight. So what I'm not sure on is, do I have to jack this up to allow that to fall down? Kind of just force it down. I've seen some videos where they literally just pull this down and it drops down to there, it's fine. Other videos where they jack this up, and that can be a bit awkward because of the space you've got. What I don't want to do is force this down if it can't actually go down any further, causing more damage. So I think I am going to jack this up and then force this down. So the next thing is that I've got these pickle forks that have started off the process but can't seem to finish it off. So these are quite good for having got to there. So beyond that, I've seen people use impact air wrenches pushing that down. They've got various kind of tools to lever this down. You get like a piece of metal, either an S hook or some sort of kind of Y shape, and then you can use a bar to push this down. I've seen people use kind of various kind of specialist equipment, but there's no equipment that goes in there and then opens up. All the ball joint extractors, separators are basically kind of essentially could be pushing that nut down, and you can't get to it. So there's no specialist tool, which is amazing. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is causing damage to this boot here. So there's two things I'm going to try today. First off is these clamps are pretty strong. So I can't see why I can't, if I can get the angle, might be able to get the angle, put them on there and to push against something in the car. Looking at it now, it's a little bit tight. The other thing is a chain. So some of these tools that you get are like an S clamp that goes on there. If I put a chain around here, then I use this big crowbar here to go in the chain, I can then push that down and use that force and then pop that out. So there are the two things I'm going to try today. First thing though, I think I am going to jack it up. This isn't working at all. These are too big, and there's nowhere really for it to attach to. So I've seen other people get a chain or get some sort of S-bar, and you find a bit of leverage there and pull down, but it's just not working. So what I'm going to try for a bit, because this is all loose, all this is all loose. It's just kind of a bit tight in there. Obviously it's at an angle as well. So just give it a few taps with a chisel. I've seen some guy do it with an air impact tool, just kind of hammering down to see if I can kind of loose it. I mean, it is some way out. It's just not all the way out. So these things are awkward. There's just no specialist tool. So I'm going to give it a go, just giving it a tap and try and loosen it that way. We are getting there, it's just really slow. And give it a bit of a clean up and just take it slowly, really. I'd say we're only halfway. It still goes right inside. I've tried opening up this here, hammering down on this, which I've seen people do before. Nothing else is working for me really. There's other tactics where people have jacked up the suspension, put like something metal there, and then they release it quickly, and the force of the suspension pushes this down. But I think this is too stuck for that, and equally that gap doesn't change, it doesn't really push down at all, so it's not going to make much difference, and my trolley jack doesn't kind of release very quickly. So I'm just going to continue slowly. I don't think levering it underneath is going to work. I think the hammer and chisel is slowly working. It's going to let the penetrating oil do its thing. Try and open up this a bit more and just kind of hammer it down, but it's about halfway, so I've got it that far, I can definitely get the whole thing. Just very aware of damaging that boot, which is why I don't want to put too much more of the pickle fork in, but that's not really doing much at this stage anyway. I mean, if the car's not seized, you put that in, push it down and it comes out. But obviously with a seized car, things are never that simple, are they? More progression. What I'm doing at the moment, I've got a chisel in and I am basically getting some leverage. So get it in there a little bit tight, just like that. Hit in there just to kind of lever it that side, and I'm doing the same to this side. At some point I'll hammer this down. As you can see, I think it's just really, I mean, when you get something rusted, it's, you know, it's like a weld really, so it's all grimy in there. Just slowly. No, nothing else is going to work on this really. I mean, just me pulling down is not going to create as much force as the hammer action. I think the chap that I saw on YouTube where he used an air drill, or an air hammer, just to vibrate it down, seemed to be one of the most effective. So if it's not rusted, then all those techniques I've talked about or tried probably would work. But this is basically breaking years of rust and corrosion. Slowly, see, since I've been doing this, I've got that darker patch. That's the progression I've made. So just slowly. With using a crowbar is that if I was to put any weight on that, I'm just going to bend everything. So you've got to be a little bit careful. Now the video showed that someone just puts a crowbar and forces it down, but that would just bend all that metal there. So I'm just going to slowly work it. I can see that the control arm's moving, but that ball point's not moving at all. So that's not strong enough metal to pull that out. So you kind of better pushing up, but I can't really get the grip on it. I'm just slowly working. I'm hoping the penetrating oil should make a difference. So I didn't try that yesterday. But I can't really use too much force on this, it's going to bend the control arm. Really small progression. As you can see, every little bit comes out is really rusted. So it's just basically fused in there. This seems to be the only thing that's working, it's just the hammer in, which is obviously quite noisy, but once it's out, it's out. And I've made, you can see there, a bit of progression. So I'm actually jacking this up now and then hammering it down because I'm not sure how far this can go down. And you haven't really got much of a bite on there. Obviously, if I had a disc on, I still would do, but that'd be in the way then. So that's causing a bit of damage to the old jack. That's what it's there for. Right, suddenly it seems to be going. That's made quite a lot of progression. I think sometimes once you break the bonds, you hopefully. I think it is pretty much loose. It's not going to just pop out. So I'm going to put the jack on that again. But that seems to move quite freely then. Pops back in, which means if it can pop in, it can pop out. I think we have done it. So it's not the easiest thing to jack up this. And we just pop back in, so obviously it can pop back out again. So there you go, we've broken the bond, that's loose now, which it couldn't do before, so I'll show you there. So you can see that going in, going out. That's how it should be. So that's loose, and now it's just about getting it out. So the actual bonds, the rust bond's broken. That's loose. Get in there. There you go. Out. Oh, amazing. Very well not to get my fingers caught in there. Done. So basically the reason that was so hard was purely because of the rust. So this process of this pickle fork, and obviously whatever you're going to use to lever this down, it shows you that you don't actually need to hit the suspension up to lever this down, but I doubt there's a lot of free movement there, so you can do it. Obviously all the rust has caused it to fuse, so definitely before you even start, get some penetrating oil on there, because I think that's definitely made a difference. And I think it's just the impact of the hammer, whether you use an air hammer or an actual normal hammer, is going to break apart the rust. There's no way that would have come out with what I've been shown on the internet, which is jacking it up, putting a piece of metal down and let the suspension force it out. It was too rusted. And even just using this wouldn't be enough. Even with significant leverage, you basically just need to work on that rust. So I think for this car, this has done like 150,000 miles with that kind of rust. As you just saw here, the way that I worked on it slowly with the penetrating oil, the hammering, is the only way to get rid of that bond. Once that's done, then obviously the classical tools, the pickle fork, the various things you've seen will work, and work relatively easy. It's just breaking that bond. So done. One stage further forward. I will mention as well is that when I initially took out this pinch bolt, it was all in order. I left it in thinking, well, the bolt being left in is not going to keep that tight. That's obviously solid metal. I left it in, started to work on the knuckle, and then as I decided to take this off because I wanted every advantage, I've had to ratchet that out, and that is completely warped and taken out the threads on this bolt, so I had to buy a new one. So that's a bit of a lesson for me, really. It's just, you know, if you've got a bolt, take it out. I was leaving it in there so I didn't lose it, but having taken it out, I've completely stripped it out, so I can't use that. So I bought a replacement which should fit. The only difference, hasn't got the star bit at the end, but I think it should be fine. Still do the job. I might see if I can order a specialist one, but this is all I can find for now. So that'll do. And then the next stage is take out the drive shaft. The next stage is to get this drive shaft out. So now this is, at least we should have a bit more flexibility. Still might not be very easy, but work out the best way of doing it. I can go up there. There you go, it's not too bad. Now obviously I'm going to replace this drive shaft, but I haven't actually looked into the specifics of how you do that without causing any damage. I know sometimes there can be a circlip or an oil retainer in there, so for now I'm just going to strap it up so it doesn't come out, and we'll do that when the bearings are replaced. So it probably could just sit there. I think in some instances they'll just put a little strap on it just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. I think we'll be fine just resting there. I've got to have a bit of space for this press. So I'll leave that there for now, it seems to be okay. Right, so the next thing we're going to do is we've got to press out this bearing. So there should be a clip in here somewhere. I'm just going to have a little look at this in a second, but first off, the kit we're going to use to do this is, just turn you around, a silver line press kit. Now, I haven't used this before, this is a new one, so I'm going to have a quick look at this bearing and work out what I need, and I'll show you the setup and how it all works. Clear this up a little bit. It doesn't appear to be any kind of circlip. The videos I've watched has a little circlip, but it's quite an obvious one, so it seems to be just pressed in without any clip. One thing to be wary of as well is the speed sensor at the back. Let me just see if I can turn the flash on. So you can see just there, so at the top just there is your speed sensor. Now I'm not going to try to get that out because I think I'll probably cause some damage. Well, I'll have a quick look, but I've seen people push this out without taking this off, because it's been in there for so long, the process of taking it off could damage it, and you can get a press kit that kind of just slightly avoids that. So I'm going to give that a go in the first. So I'm just going to have another little double check for any outstanding clips, and then get the press set up and tell you what's going on. You can see here, I'm just checking it, there's already movement just with my finger. I mean, it feels like, oh no, that's the centre of the bearing, but you can see the amount of movement. It's probably what's been the issue in the first place. Obviously this bearing's been taken apart. The setup I'm using, as you can see, I'll show you, you have a range of selectors you can choose, and you just choose ones that's correct for your bearing. So first thing you need to do is this cover plate. So the cover plate has to go over the bearing, sit nice and flat there, so the bearing's going to fall into it. So obviously if I had one that's slightly bigger, for example, it's just, I mean, that probably would work just as well. In fact, I might use that one. This one is very close. If I end up putting it on slightly to the side, the bearing's just going to push up against it, whereas that seems to fit quite nice there. But I'll show you on this one anyway. So once you've chosen your cup that it falls into, you choose, I guess the end plate that's going to push against it. The bolt goes through, and then that sits on there, and then the bearing goes in it. I'm going to choose a bigger one, but the bearing would fall into it. That's all that does. On the other side, what you have to do is get your push plate, I'm going to call it. Now I'm trying to be careful not to damage this sensor, and as you can see, you've got a proud part of the push plate there, goes in to the side. Not much movement because you've got this proud element, and I'm being careful not to push that sensor out of the way. And then that's obviously on this side going through, and then you use the washer and the nuts to compress. And I think what I'm going to do, I've seen a few people say that these break and they strip because they're not. I think you get an expensive one, you can use it for an impound impact wrench tool or air tool, but I'm going to use a spanner and a wrench. So I'm going to put a spanner on that end and then ratchet this end and push out slowly. So I'm going to get all that set up, and then I'll show you the process. Now, so I've got an oversized receiver cup with the hold plate or push plate at this end, which fits nice and snug in there, making sure I keep it all straight. And then in this end, got that push plate just missing that sensor there, and then this is just hand tight at the moment. So I probably could take this out, but I've seen a few videos where they'll say you'll break it getting this sensor out, and you don't need to do it, you can do it without. So that's what I'm going to try in the first. So now just to get it all set up to release, hopefully. I was going to use my Bajo set for this, and I've got the right socket. It's 34, goes in the end okay, but my spanners only get up to 19, so I'm going to have to go back to the Halford set to get that done. Hopefully I don't need to buy anything specialist, because that's going to be similar size, probably 34 as well. So back with my other set. These spanners got up to 19, my Halford set got up to 19, and I was told pretty much Halfords would do everything. And this is way larger, so I managed to get an adjustable wrench, which literally just about covers it. So I think that is going to be, it's showing at 530, 32. So just about covers it. So I think, yeah, so that's 32. Let's try this then. So that 34 is probably a bit too big, but you're not putting a massive amount of torque on this, so it shouldn't round the nut off. Funny enough, this is, maybe it's 33. Taking this apart because I was expecting a circlip to be on the outside. There's normally like a lip on the back to stop the bearing going back too far, but it looks like in this case there's a circlip on the back. So I didn't actually tighten it up, I just had another little check There's a circlip there. So I've given it a spray and a bit of a clean. I've seen some people say that they really get wedged in there. You need to kind of hammer them a little bit to get them loose, which is going to be a bit awkward. So I'm going to let that settle in, try my circlip pliers to remove that, and then back to the bearing press. Little rethink, and I'm going to take a step back, because the circlip at the back is basically what other cars just have, like a ridge, a kind of ridge within the knuckle that stops the bearing coming back too far. Now in theory I could still put a push plate in there, push it out, but the bit that was moving was just like the internal cone that kind of dropped off on the other side. Now I don't think that's going to be enough to push it out. If I'm pushing on that, it's not going to push the whole bearing out, so I need to push on the outer edge, in which case I do need to get the circlip out, and the speed sensor's directly in the way. So as it shows, with all cars, they're all slightly different. Another video I looked at didn't need to remove the speed sensor, and the circlip was on the outside with like an internal kind of lip on the inside. Obviously this is completely different, essentially kind of backwards to a certain degree with that circlip. So I'm going to take this out, hopefully loosen that, take that out, and then I can get a larger bearing plate to push on the outside. So luckily this has come off okay, and then I'll show you where I get when all that's removed. With all things, I've got to remove the speed sensor. You look online, people undo it, it comes off easily. They never show you the rust and the problems you get. So I've undone this nut at the top, which is fine. It is a little bit rusted in, so I've just got a very, very small screwdriver, and very gently I'm just going to tap in, and you can see it moves. It's just rusted in. As a new car, that would just pull out, I imagine. But very gently, you know, if it breaks, it breaks, but it has to come out essentially. But I'm not going to rush it, and that hopefully should come out without breaking. But as with all old cars, it's not just what to do, it's the fact that it's rusted as well. So I'm going to keep on working on that very slowly, and that should come out hopefully. I'll run out there. Thumb underneath, and I'm pushing up, and I'm just slowly, not too much force, just take your time. I mean, I'm breaking this screwdriver here, and you can see it coming out. And there you go. So that does come out. Just slowly, it's just all there. I mean, it's actually plastic, but as the rust develops, it kind of closes that gap. It just pinches it. So that should still work in theory. So that is out. Perfect. Seems to make sense now. So now I've cleared it up. Obviously, the bearing's kind of fallen apart, and I thought maybe I can get it out with a hammer if it's not too loose. The bearing kind of fallen apart with a little lip, and there's no way for the bearing to come out. So basically this is reverse. So the reason the circlip's on the inside is because the structure of the knuckle basically accommodates the bearing being pushed in this way and goes up flush against the knuckle there, and then the circlip pushes it in. Now every other video I've seen, every video, even the Peugeot 207, it's the reverse. So I think what's going to end up having to happen, if I can get that circlip out, or when I can get it out because it's rusted in, I will probably have to use some sort of plate going in there inside and pushing it out that way. I haven't seen any videos of the reverse knuckle, so I'm going to go away and have a look. But you've got a little lip there which hopefully won't deform, and I can push it out that way. So before I even start looking at doing that, I need to get this circlip out, which is rusted in. I can't see me getting this out very easily, so I'm going to try a little bit longer. But if I can't do it, and the awkwardness of trying to get this bearing out now that it's completely stripped, it might be easier to take the knuckle off. Now the only reason I've hesitated doing that is because I'm told that it could be an alignment setting, which I don't know if it is. But worst case scenario, I just take it to a garage to get it aligned when it's all fixed. It will still have saved me a lot of money just to get the alignment, but equally I can mark up where that is going to come off and put it back on. It shouldn't really make a difference, but it might be that I have no choice. So I'm going to keep on going for a little bit and then see if I might take this whole knuckle off. I decided to take the knuckle off. I just think it's going to be easier this way. So I've got a 17mm long socket for the nut just there, and I imagine I'm going to have to knock this down. One of these has come off recently. I got the suspension done, but I can't remember if it's the left or the right one, near side offside, but hopefully this will come off okay. Well, that was easy. Probably the easiest thing's happened on this car. I've undone that slightly and it's just popped down, so that is probably the easiest thing that's happened on this job so far. If I get that down there. There you go. Knuckle off, so that wasn't too bad. Quite surprised by that. So now I can work on it off the car. I mean, I would have done it in the first place, but I'm told that it, if you can do it on the car, it's a bit easier. I didn't expect it to be this hard, but that was pretty easy. I've done some markings so I can put it back on. I took the knuckle off in the end, and you can have a closer look here where the knuckle seems to be the reverse to what I've seen on the internet, where built into the knuckle is the lip on the outer side, which means the bearing would press on the inside and circlip on the inside. So that's the reverse of what I've seen so far. The only issue I think it might cause me is just how I press that bearing in. So I'm hoping it's just the reverse basically, but because this bearing is basically completely stripped out, how now do I push this out? Now there is a lip on the inside, so I'm hoping one of my my push plates will go in there and push it out, but I'll come to that later. The first thing before we have to work that out is this circlip. Now, there is no way that is ever coming out with circlip pliers. As with everything on the car, it's rusted in. Now, I've seen a few people take an air wrench to it. I haven't got one of those. I'm trying to make it swivel. So all it's going to be, really, is, again, slowly tapping away with some punches and then hopefully loosening it that way. You can see the forces involved. I'm trying to use this to get behind the circlip, and it is bent it. You see it, there you go. So it's bent it. So there is no way I'll get this out on the car. I mean, these aren't great, they're just soft, aren't they? Let's just snap that. But I think I have to do is just try and slowly tap all the way around, just try and break that bond, that rust weld. So there's no quick, there should be no quick way to do this. Just, I'm an absolute nightmare getting this out. I tried chisels, tried hammering it all the way around, tried picking it out, it's not going anywhere. So the last thing to try is some peat, and then see if that will make a difference. As expected, I'm running out of gas. Damn it. I think it's starting to go, so I put it in a vice, taking it to my loft where I do some work, and just kind of slowly, I was hammering underneath to raise it, and then hammering out. What you really need is something that's probably as strong metal as a screwdriver, but it's going to go in that hole. So I tried drilling out so you could drill and lever it out, but didn't have much luck with that. But just kind of slowly hammering and then actually causing a bit of a hook at the end of this is going to get it out. So I think it's going to go. I'll keep on going and then hopefully it'll come out. But I mean, there's no way you do that on the car. So a knuckle had to come out. You can see I can now get a screwdriver behind there, which I can kind of lever this out. But There we go. Oh god, that was so tight. It's actually in good shape. Well, I'm going to replace it. I've got a little thing, but you could reuse that. But that was so tight. Just, no doubt covered in rust. Anyway, didn't need the heat in the end. I'm sure it would have helped a little bit, but I obviously ran out of butane. But just perseverance. I think obviously on the table, I was using quite a small hammer. As soon as you give it a bit more of a whack, you can get right underneath there. So right from the word go, put it in a vise, get a nice kind of well, I think to be fair, some sort of flathead screwdriver would do it. It tends to be kind of hardened steel anyway. Get underneath, get that kind of lip, and then kind of just work your way around. As soon as you get one end, then you can kind of see lever it out. But all done. So I need to try and press this bearing out to put the new one in. As I explained before, this is kind of reversed from the other videos I've seen, where the lip that's cast into the knuckle is on the outside, whereas on other videos it's on the inside, which means the clip was on the inside, which I've taken out. As you see, it's a bit rusted in, taken it out. So now the issue I have with this one is obviously trying to work out how best to press this out, because essentially the bearing fell apart. If I kind of show you how it works here. The bearing, so you've got like a little lip on the inside just there. This bearing set fits in quite neatly like that. Then we had this bushing, or whatever you want to call it, in the middle, fairly tight, and then there was like a seal ring there, and that seems to be it. I'm not going to push that all the way in. And then the same on the other side. So this, as you saw when I used my pull hammer, this on the outside was, which I'm going to replace this, was this, which holds the drive axle, and then when you pull it out, you actually force this bit off, which you have to kind of force that off. So I think it's obviously kind of pushed in via pressure. What I think I'm going to have to do is basically kind of semi-build this up again to allow it to be pushed out, because if I don't do that, then I have to somehow get some sort of push plate, to push against that internal ring. It's got to push out this way, and I can't push it anywhere there. So I either put a bushing that will go in there and push on that ring, which could deform it, or I hopefully rely on the fact that this together, like that, and with that, should push it out. Because I think what's going to happen is that I can use a push plate to push on this metal, push down on the ball bearings. The only escape that the ball bearings would have would be to go inwards and out, and it can't do that because of this. So that, I'm fairly confident, should work like that. But at least you can kind of see, it's pretty rough, but you can see how it's put together. And then you had one on the other side with the final cover just there. Obviously it was reversed. This was this side, and that was the other side. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my appropriate push plates and wheel bearing push kit to push that out this way. So that should just go out now. So get that set up. As you can see on the inside here, I'll be getting a ring, probably a bit too big. Oh, maybe this one. So this is going to be the receiver. So basically that's going to receive the bearing when it comes out. And as you can see just there, I've cleaned it all up. You can see the outside of the bearing there. There's no circlip in the way, which was in there. That's been removed, and it should hopefully just push out, hopefully fairly simple, into this. Now, this is a fairly universal kit we've got here, but nothing seems to fit perfectly. So you've obviously got the bearing in there. You have a very small lip that this cover would fit on. And if I do that, it's actually not going to accommodate that bearing coming out, so it's going to have to be the bigger one. Got no choice about that, which is a bit too big. So I'm going to have to be very careful to set this up as straight as I can. It's quite important to make sure this is all straight and nothing's at an angle, but that's what I'm going to have to do. Got a range of different kind of push plates here, so this one seems to be the closest. So you think about what we've got here. So obviously that's smaller than the hole, so that's going to push. I think I want it as wide as possible. Obviously, this will have to go in. That can go in there. So that's all going to push this way now. This is the push plate that I think is probably going to accommodate the most. Just about. Because this is reversed, it's the other way around, so this is going to go through there. Let's get it. So normally this would be reversed, this would be out the back of the car, but obviously my knuckle's reversed. So as you can see, as we tighten this down, that's going to push this forward. This cup at the back stops it moving, and it's going to push, so it'll be kind of a rigid stance there. That's going to push that bearing out into this cup, but obviously you've got to make sure it's all aligned properly before I go. Get that nice and tight. I think it's going to be more of an issue. I mean, getting it out's not too bad. More of an issue getting it in, and to make sure it's straight on the way in, but I think that's not too bad. Like I said, it's not perfect because I haven't got a plate receiver, whatever you want to call it. Just going to fit perfectly, so that is the setup. So for this back nut, 32 doesn't fit it. 34 seems a little loose, but should be okay. It's not going to have a lot of pressure. Not going to put an impact wrench on it or anything. So it's probably Imperial. Saying that. No. So I'm going to stick with the 34. With this end, it is. I haven't actually got a socket that's going to fit that, but that is 36, 37, maybe. Let's try it. With 31-ish. 32 there. No, that fit. Oh, there you go. That. So 32 fits that. There you go. I'll use that one. Well, that's all set up. I'm just going to keep this tight. I'm going to rotate that, keep that in one place, and then just use the ratchet here to slowly. You can use an impact driver, but I've seen a lot of people complain about these slightly cheaper brands getting threaded because the impact driver is too powerful. So I'm just going to take it slowly. It's extremely tight. It's quite hard to do off the car with outside advice. So I'm going to keep on giving it a go. Obviously, you naturally expect it to be really tight, but quite awkward on the table. But I'm going to see if I can make any progress. Oh, it's tough. It's very. I should just get advice, but I haven't really got one that's going to hold it. So I can use my own impact strength. There you go, let's go in. That is tough. It's a bit too hard to do on the table. I mean, I probably could force it and get kind of extender on, but I'm going to end up kind of rocking off the table. So I just want to see if I made any progression, just to see if I'm not just kind of somehow pushing against metal that's not going to move. It's probably going to be a job for the impact driver. Let's have a quick look. got with an issue here. So I've obviously I've forced this on here, so I'm gonna have to pull that off. That's been compressed in there. Right, so I can't do this by hand. Even my body weight's not enough to turn it, and I imagine it's pretty tight anyway. But with the rust, it's going to be more than what I can just do without really kind of putting all my force into it. So I'm going to use my impact wrench. It's only on 2, so I'm worried about it breaking. So it's on 2 at the moment. I'm going to see how we get on, and then go up to 4. To 2. It's turning, it's just very worried about it breaking. Let's have a little look at it. Broken the seal, it started to move. It's using a lot of force, so I'm not gonna push this because I've seen it thread and break these kind of nuts. So obviously it is working. I'm going to put a bit of WD-40 in there, let it settle. It's a bit noisy at the moment, so I'm going to take it outside, and then there's no way I could do that by hand. So I'm going to put a bit of WD-40, let it settle, take it outside, and give it another blast. But that is broken the seal there. Now, I'm sure if you had professional equipment, you could just hammer that. But like I said, this isn't the most expensive bearing press, and I've heard people complain about threading and breaking this nut, so I'm not going to do that. Got it outside again now because it's a bit noisy on the inside, but it's going to be slow progress, I think. I've seen people do it with a wrench or a spanner, but I've got a large kind of leverage and it's on the car, so I couldn't do that unless it's on a vise. Yeah, so it's going. I'm not going to push it too much. There we go. What a beast this is. I think I borrowed this from a neighbour. I think I'm definitely going to be getting one. And there you go, it's out. So that is tight. So you can get a mid-range. I was going to get a mid-range torque wrench, but I think that was pushing it. So I think when I look at getting one, I'm going to get one of these high torque wrenches. I quite like the D-Watt ones, but that can do anything. There you go. So the next thing is obviously to put it in. I'm going to be a lot more careful about the setup on the way in because you basically get one chance to put in the bearing in. Wasn't completely happy with that setup, the way where this was all placed. And also, but what I have done, a little technique I've got is I've put the bearing in the fridge. So it's going to cool it down a little bit and hopefully make it slide in a bit easier. Now that's all done, I thought I'd show you what we're left with. So the knuckles had its bearing removed. So I'm going to give that a clean up. It's a really tight fit. Obviously you'd expect that anyway, but I think years of corrosion made that a little bit harder. Obviously that this impact wrench was basically, I could not have done that the way I was doing it without that. I couldn't have done it by hand. I think it was on the car and you got enough leverage, you probably could do it. But yeah, I mean, that was amazing. You get one of them soon. So I'm going to give this a clean up. Obviously the bearing's been removed. The only thing that I have probably got wrong, well, it's been an easy fix, but it seems to be this push plate here is now pressed into that collet, which I'm going to have to kind of grind off or cut off or put it in a I'll show you now that. Put it in a vise or something, so that's pressed in pretty firmly now, but I'm sure I'll be able to get that off, put a little cut in it and pull it off or something, but might have been able to get a slightly different one of those, but it worked nonetheless, so that'll be something to solve later. And we're left with the bearing. So I think, like I said, the plan with leaving the bearings in naturally, with the collet going in, was enough to push it through. I was worried at first when this came out how I was going to push it out. The amount of force involved. I mean, you've got a little ridge there, but I won't be surprised if that's going to deform. So you definitely need to kind of, if it all falls apart, build it back up again, keeping the bearings, keeping this plastic container with the collet going in there. Obviously, it's there now. And as you can see, the bearings can't go anywhere because this collet stops it. So that's enough force to push it out. Looking at the bearing, I mean, they're a tight fit anyway. I'm hoping when it goes in it's a bit easier. I'll be using a bit of grease. I've put it in the freezer, so it's going to shrink it down a little bit. I haven't seen anyone heat this up and then expand it a little bit, but I mean, it's made to fit. It just needs a bit of force. So that's the next job. So now we have to put in the new bearing, which I've actually had in the freezer for a couple of days, just to kind of constrict it to give it its best possible chance of getting in the knuckle just there. So the bearing's slightly different to the one that was taken off. The main thing to consider is magnetic. So it's magnetic here, which is where the speed stroke ABS sensor will recognise. So that is going to be on this side. So we'll be pushing it in this way. Have to get the right setup to force that in there. One thing to be wary of, I've ordered this for this car under the reg. I've never tried it before. Obviously the knuckle came off, which is slightly different to what I expected. The bearing's too big. That's not going to fit in there. Which is very irritating because it said it would fit this car. So it just shows you the extra problems that you get when ordering. This is ordered off the back of the registration plate, says it's suitable for the car, matches all the videos and doesn't fit the knuckle, and obviously it's been aware that the knuckle is slightly different to what I expected, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board to order a new bearing. I won't be able to do this today. It's a little bit frustrating, but there we are. Just checked, and the wheel hub, the bearing hub I've got is the wrong size as well. So obviously all of this has been designed for the car, and I think because I've got a unique knuckle, I don't know why that's the case, it was reversed to what I expected. Everything's wrong. So the bearing I've got is the right bearing for the wheel hub. That would be fine, but it doesn't fit, well, that doesn't fit in there. So, and these two don't match. So I'm not even sure if the spline on the inside would match, to be honest. So I'm going to have to go back to I think it's Europe Car Parts and actually take these and say I need a replacement for these exactly, because I'm going to have to check my my drive hub as well, my drive axle, sorry, to make sure it all fits, because none of it seems to match, and it was all supposed to match based on the index. So I'll come back to you with that and tell you what the issue was. So I've got the drive shaft. Now I'm quite happy because the drive shaft fits the old hub bearing, so that is the one I need. It doesn't fit this one, which is the one I was provided for this car. And obviously this fits the bearing, so these two need to go back. I've got the right drive shaft. Back to Europe Car Parts and ask them why they've given me the wrong ones and see if I can get the right ones. So at least this fits, and we know. I mean, I could actually reuse this, but I thought it'd be cheaper to just kind of buy the whole assembly, because like 20 quid and you've got to pull this off. But we'll see. I'll see what they say, see if they've got some parts, and come back to you with what my solution is. Back at Europe Car Parts to replace these pieces. I'm hoping this video is just going to show people that things are never as simple as some of these training videos you get on YouTube. I'm going to edit this so it has all the mistakes, all the errors, all the things that go wrong, because that's the reality of car maintenance. If you're fairly new, not these perfect jobs that go well. So let's see what we can get. After about an hour, very helpful. It was the wrong bearing, so we've got the replacement bearing. Strangely, this is on the system for the Peugeot 207 as well. But obviously, having had my old bearing to bring in, we could check it was correct. They brought out a few different bearings, so that is definitely the right bearing. It already fits, which is perfect. They couldn't find the bearing housing assembly, which means I'm going to have to get this in working order. It still does work, but I've got to pull off this little cap here, clean it up. The threads seem okay on the inside, or the spline seems okay on the inside. So just give it a good old clean and work out how to get this off. I've seen some people use some air tools, which I haven't got. You can use a Dremel or some sort of hacksaw, create a groove and just kind of chisel it off. So that's the next stage to get this back in working order, but at least I know that will fit then. So, and these two do fit. So I'll show you them a bit more clearly when we get back, but today I need to get this off. Right, so I'm back. So I thought I've got a bit more space and I'll kind of show you what I've managed to get. So bearing's very similar to the last one, just smaller. I'm told that it was under the Peugeot 207, but obviously the guy knew what he was doing. When I looked it up, it must have a number of bearings, but must be something specific about this model. So luckily I had my old bearing I could take in, and he could just bring out all the bearings that might match, and this was the one. So he brought out a few that didn't match whatsoever. So these are identical. So luckily I had that. I don't know whether it'd be an order number or part number, but not sure. So same principle applies. You can have a magnetic side and non-magnetic side. Magnetic side has to go against where the ABS sensor will be, which is in there. ABS stroke speed sensor. So that's going to go that side. It's going to get pushed in. Be careful not to damage it on the way in. But I think it should be okay. The good thing about this one is, you know, it half fits in, same as this one. So it's already going to be kind of fairly aligned to go in. So that last little push, I'll put some grease on. But that should go in okay, so that's fine. The thing he couldn't find though was this bearing hub assembly. So I'm going to have to clean this up, as I said before. As when you take these off, this inner ring that's compressed on gets stuck. So this bit has to come off. So that is essentially like that. Yeah, that's going to fit in. So that's going. This is all the correct. I can see the correct sizing, and I've already checked this spline here fits my drive shaft. Just need to clean it up. So what I've seen people do, and I'm not going to go crazy on this, but you can get an angle grinder or some sort of tool to put a cut in this and then force it off. People go at it fairly quickly and cause all sorts of damage, but I've got a bit of time on my side. So I'm just going to go at it with a hacksaw. Try and put some grooves in it, and then try and slowly force it off. I have got a puller, which might grip, but there's not much of a lip there. And I think the amount of force pulling, it's going to come out of whatever vice I've got. It's not strong enough. So I'm going to hopefully just try and tap it out. That is the only plan I've got really. People use air impact tool to force it off, but I haven't got one of those. Once that's off, give it a clean, and then we're good to go again. So I'll try and get this off shortly. Everything with these cars are a nightmare, aren't they? I mean, it's just, in principle, it's all simple, but every single step is hard work. So I thought I'd just kind of get the cut started here. I was going to put in a vise, but I thought I could kind of do a cut. It's not even scratching it. I mean, obviously it's going to be pretty hard steel if it's going to be a bearing, but I thought I could slowly cut it and make a groove. I mean, I've seen people use angle grinders, if that's going to get through everything, but that's fairly aggressive. Can't even. Not even a scratch. That is crazy. This isn't going to work. It's a brand new blade, brand new saw. I know I'm moving a bit, but it'd still make not even a scratch. It's just polished it. Oh, right, so that's not going to work. I've got a very, very small Dremel, little cutting disc, which hopefully might work, which I'm going to put on drill. So I'm just going to give that a go. God, really tough steel. To show you now. It's only a little disc, but I mean, barely anything at all. It's not going to do it. What I'm going to try is a bit of heat, rather than going by a blade and do it that way. So this is butane, propane mix. So it's not going to be oxy settling or anything, but hopefully it should be enough. It doesn't seem to made much difference. I'm using a bit of leverage here. And I've seen on videos they just drop off, but this one doesn't. No. So to get this collet off, I've resorted to having to get another set of tools, but I've tried everything else. So these are probably the same price as what it would cost to get a new one of these. So I thought I'd go for it. And this is to get the suitable clamp it on, and then pull it off. But I'll set it all up and show you how it all works. This is the set. It's an OMT set, about 40 quid, 35 quid or something. But I want to get into all this anyway, so I'm not too bothered about buying all these tools. But obviously it's a lot now, so I'll summarise for you at the end all the tools I've bought. If you are going to tackle this job, what realistically you're going to have to get. But let's get this set up and show you how it works. So as you can see, it's kind of got a bit of a, not really a knife edge, but it's got an edge there, and then we've got a bit of a groove there to get behind. As you can see, it's not quite circle. As you go out, it's more of a oval shape, where obviously it's trying to get the circle out. But it's here and here, here and here, it's underneath. This apparently would create 5 tons of pressure now. Compared that to my minuscule amount of pressure on the leverage, it should in theory not have too much issues. The second issue which I've got to show you, that this is obviously normally made for like a fixed shaft. Obviously we've got a hole here, so I need to put something in here. But I'll show you that in a second. Now you can see the problem I'm going to have, which you can get around, is this is normally made for a fixed axle, so that would push on the axle there and pull it up. Obviously we've got a hole, so I just need something to go across. Obviously if it pops it, I can then take that plate off. If not, I've got to put like a nut in there. So I'll see if I can find something to do that, and then it should just be screw that down, pull that up, hopefully. I just found the perfect thing. It's just a wheel hub nut. That'll go in there. Can't go down any further. That'll screw down on there, push down as if it was an axle, and it's perfect. That'll pull up. So I'm going to make sure it's all tight and then give it a go. Hopefully it's just going to be hand tools. You see that all set up like that. Oh, it's quite tight. I mean, it wouldn't be too bad. If this was in a clamp, it wouldn't be too bad, but I think it's going. Yeah, it's definitely coming off. It's just a bit tight. Mary, just twist it.
To you?
Yeah, yeah. You can put it back as well. Ratchet it.
Oh, right, sorry.
Because it got a bit too hard for my partners to hold, so, or to push, so I've put it in a vice, and a lot easier really. The only issue I've got is that this is coming off centre, which I might be careful not to push it too much because it's just coming off centre there. A chisel on it. So this isn't the strongest vice in the world, but was that I was told when you put this together you can put it fairly loose at the bottom because it just kind of pulls up, but obviously these bits are a bit more important because as you get a lot of tension it pushes down and it will pull it to the side, which means it comes off. Obviously there's a bit of flexion anyway, so I've done these up quite tight. Hopefully that will mean it won't come off as much. Still a lot of movement now. Okay. Yeah, so these are really important. So yeah, the amount of force going through it, it's going to overpower whatever torque you've got there. So it's really got to be tight on there. I mean, like I said, I didn't expect it to be this hard, so I was just using like a little vice. It's got two little screws in it. I've just pulled it out the table, but I'm almost there, so there's no need to go any further. But oh, it's quite tight actually. that's pretty much it. I mean, there's literally zero tolerance in this. There's no way a hammer or chisel would have got that off. There you go. Finally off. Now I have to check. I think that's like 5 tons of pressure or something. But now, even the head of the screw, I'll show you in a second, it's caused quite a bit of damage to this, but it's done the job, so wow. So we finally got it off, which I could not believe how much force was on that. So I'm going to have to clean this off. I can reuse that. I know it fits, which is good. Obviously extremely hard. I mean, I've seen people, you've seen the different techniques on the internet where they get a little cut in it and they get an air press, but I mean that was immense amount of force, you know, in the tonnage. But we got it off, but it did cause quite a bit of damage. So if you look at this tool here, I mean that there was not supposed to be like that. I think this thing is basically used to have like an end on it that's snapped off. Or no, actually it's probably like that actually. Somehow that's inserts come out and it's flattened it, which means I can't get this out now. I'm gonna have to kind of file that to get it out. It gets stuck in there. And then this is held up fairly nicely. There's a little bit where, when it's not quite centered, it's kind of pulled a bit of the metal off there. But obviously you kind of want those teeth to be able to dig in. As you can see there, the amount of force involved there, which could be the positioning of it. It might be that you have to kind of get a bite, pull it up, reposition it. Whereas I kind of forced it quite a bit of away before I repositioned it. But I must, bear in mind the amount of force. I think it's held up okay-ish. I think probably I could have repositioned that one, but and this, the actual thread was completely, well, not completely bent, but it was contorting. It's kind of sprung back now, not too bad, but I think there's a bit of, well, there's obviously, this is the issue. It's caused a lot of damage to the end. I mean, I don't know what's happening there. There's some sort of, it's like almost, this bit goes in there, and it's just fallen out. So I think it had like a nib at the end. Obviously, it'd still do its job if you didn't have that flange on it. So in theory that would still work, but I'm not quite happy with the ends coming off, because it's going to need those teeth for some hard to fit places. But I mean, it's not a premium tool. But that, I mean, that was, I can't imagine anything being harder than that. That was really tight, but shows you all the kind of forces involved in this, and these pressure bearings. But anyway, got it off. Okay, so now we are going to put the new bearing that does fit into my knuckle. It's been in the freezer, which I've seen a few people do, which kind of just reduces the size very slightly just to give it any assistance. And the main thing that can go wrong at this stage, I'm told, is you've got two sides. Obviously you've got a magnetic side and non-magnetic. Now you want to have the magnetic side on the side of the ABS speed sensor, which for me is here. This is obviously kind of slightly reversed like I told you, so I'll have to be pushing it in from the back essentially. It's already partially there. And I'll be putting just a bit of grease on it. I'm going to give it a bit of a wipe to get the condensation off. Put a bit of grease on it just to help, and then it'll be the same kind of principle, just pushing it in with my push set. You can obviously see the magnet, but it's just good to give it a check. That's on the inside where the ABS sensor is. Going to put a little bit of lubrication. I don't think it's going to make much difference, but I've seen people do it just to any little bit of assistance to push it in. for the biggest plate I can, because what I don't want to do is cause too much pressure on the inner or the magnet there. I want to push on the outside in case I end up pulling it apart or pushing it apart. I don't think that would be the case, but because as sure the last one, it all kind of self-contained, but this is slightly smaller, so that should be the perfect size to push it in. And worst case, I'll swap it out just before it goes in, but that is just slightly smaller diameter, so that's the perfect one there. With the cup holder, a bit easier this time, nice big surface there on the outside. So we'll end up going for probably one that's going to fit nicely. Not that one. That's a good one. There you go. Just try and get that nice and straight as we can. Pretty much in. Just have a little check, make sure. A little more. That's it. A lot easier going in than coming out. And there we go, bearings in. So now it's just the circlip. I put the clip in, obviously, so you've got a gap here. Just might be a little bit fiddly. Probably could have done with a slightly bigger pair of pliers, but not too bad actually. Not quite in there. That's it. That's it. It's all done. So I've got no idea if the grease or the cooling or putting it in the freezer made a difference, but anything that's going to help. Obviously coming out it's going to be a lot harder than going in. You saw the difference in it coming out. Not too bad. And the reason why I've done this video, I'm going to keep all the errors in, because I think if you're changing a brand new car, it's all going to be fairly simple, but as you can see, everything on this is fused or weak or broken or whatever it is. So I think it's important to see that, so you know what you're really getting yourself into, because I didn't. Obviously I've got the time to fix this car, but it's good to know the reality. All these videos on YouTube, just it's all very easy, all the bolts come off, or you get a professional knows what he's doing. Obviously I'm just a DIYer, he's got a bit of an interest, so it's important to see the reality of the tools you need, the reality of the work you need to do, and the problems that can go wrong. I think this job has shown all of it. So anyway, next job is to put the hub assembly. I'm going to give it a clean first, and that's going to have to be pushed in on the other side. So yeah, happy with that. Right, so now, because we obviously refurbishing this, just going to give it a clean. Bit messy. This is as clean as it needs to be. Obviously this is going to push into this bearing in here, so I don't need to get it immaculate. Anything else I can clean up. I've a little clean inside the spindles there, the spline there, and what I am going to do, just to give it a bit more ease, I probably could just push it in straight with a bit of force and a bit of my grease here, but I am going to put this in the freezer for a bit whilst I clean this up and just kind of chill it down a little bit, just to give it an extra little helping hand to go in there. But essentially now that's off, that's going to go in there, and hopefully that's it. This has been in the fridge for a bit, or freezer for a bit. So what you want to do is support the bearing on the back. I've got a circlip, but I don't want to put too much pressure on the circlip. So this is going to go actually on the circlip, I guess, but it's going to brace the bearing rather than kind of brace the outside of the frame. I don't want to put too much pressure pushing that bearing in. That's going to. The only issue with that is that if this goes in, I don't know how proud it sits. If it does sit any proud, it's just going to hit that. But what I can do is just change plates if that's the ends. If it ends up getting pushed past this bearing, so we'll see how that goes. So that's going to go in there, and then I've got to work out. What I will do is, again, a bit of grease just to help it along its way. Enough. And then got to work out what we can use this end. Oh. Thought this was going a bit too well. I aren't going to be able to do this because this nut is too big to go through this. That's not going to work. Oh, it's going really well. Work out what to do then. We have a problem. The way to get this in is the same as getting the bearing in and out. You use this press. Problem I've got is that this this nut is too big for my bearing assembly. I don't need any specialist tools other than just being unlucky that that's so thin or getting a thinner bolt, but I think what I'm going to do, I might take it to a garage and see if they've got a press that I can use. I'm not going to buy a whole new kit with a smaller diameter thread just to do this. It's going to be a kind of standing press. So I might go and see if I can give them 20 quid or whatever it would be just to press that in. I might have a little look tonight, see if there is another tool, but it's basically this tool. It's this tool, but with a thinner thread. But I think what's probably happened is not the thread that's too thin, it's this is very small. The last one I had, which was too big, you remember, it would have fit this, but this is a very, very small spline, so that's probably the issue. I imagine this isn't standard. Normally you'd use a press, not a press kit, a standing pulley press. So I'm going to try that, I think, rather than kind of hunt around for a push kit that got a smaller thread. I don't think you'll get one because it needs to be this thick to take up some of the forces involved. So I will go and see if I can get some assistance locally. Didn't have the tools to do it, but Delisle's helped me out. I didn't actually manage to get any filming of them, but they used their press and pushed it in, which I'll show you back at home how it all looks, but all good. So I think I probably could have managed to maybe resource a smaller thread to go through, but for the sake of like 10 minutes work and come in here, help me out, which was really good. All done. So I've come back. As you can see, I wouldn't have had an issue with it clearing the bearing, so it's kind of just insert there. So a flat plate would have been perfect there, just kind of holding on. Whether you need it, I'm not quite sure. I mean, you know, you've got this clip there would hold it in, but just to be sure. And then obviously still a bit cold from the freezer, but nice and tight in there. So I'm happy with that. So a bit of a shame I can't use this kit to get this on, but I think you probably still could. I'd have to basically resource a new thread to go through to push it on. Obviously they've got at Delisle's, they had like a 20-ton press, but like I said, this would still do it. You just need to, I don't think it'd be under too much force, so it's just a bit of a shame for this really. So it is the, what's it called? Yeah, the thrust bolt. So I need a smaller thrust bolt. So it's not far off. So anything that's kind of fairly strong, up for, I mean, impact rated really, but just a little bit thinner. Would have taken a bit of time to go and find one of those, but that would still work. So something to be wary of. I think these are particularly small because the other drive shaft and housing assembly I was going to get was slightly bigger, and that would have accommodated it. But this is just literally too thick, or that's too small. So you could still use that kit, but you'd have to get a new one of these if you can. I'm not sure, but obviously anything like this that's fairly hardened, fairly strong, would do the job for that one-time job. Other than that, it's going to be a full-on press, which Delisle's did. But like you see, you've got a local garage that you've got a good relationship with. They did that for free. Took them about 2 minutes. I was hoping to film it, but they were a bit busy. Took them 2 minutes, if that, and just pressed it in. So job good. Job all done. So the next thing I need to do is research just how my drive shaft comes out. I'm not quite sure if it's going to pull out, or if I've got any kind of retaining nuts or circlips or anything. Once that's out, it's just about putting everything back together. So, yeah. The last video, this is a good kit, but we have a 22mm thrust bolt here, which was too big to go through my bearing there, which was really irritating. So I had to go to a garage to get it pressed in. Well, quickly having a look on the internet, I managed to find a site called ACCU, and I bought a very similar, it's not really a thrust bolt, but it's does the same purpose, hardened steel as well, which is 20mm, and that was perfect to go through. So I'll just show you. So you can get the same connector nut, like that. The difference between this one and this one is threaded all the way through. I'm not quite sure why this one isn't. It's just the way it is, I guess. But that's threaded all the way through. And for this, it goes through perfectly. So I can use this kit now with every aspect of doing this. So that was with delivery, I don't know, 17 quid, I think, 18 to 20 quid, something like that. I did actually order the wrong one at first, and there's hardly any threads on it, and I haven't got the right tap and die to thread it, and it was too expensive to send back because it would have basically posted the same cost as this. So just I've got it there for future. I can actually use that because that's actually a little bit longer, only a tiny little bit longer, and I could use some of these as kind of washers really, but put that aside. So we can do that now. Now I'm actually quite pleased with this kit because I've seen a few videos online where they use a press kit, like a 6-ton press kit, and it still couldn't quite get out the bearing. The impact wrench that I had was pushed to capacity, and it managed to do it with this set. So I'd actually probably choose this set over that kind of clamp, over that press. So I do recommend this. It does do the job. Even if you take the knuckle off the car, still probably better than a 6-ton press. Anyway, time to get this on the car. This in the set. So you've got the thrust bolt down there. Hopefully, best to keep that one out actually. As you can see, you can still keep the 22mm thrust bolt, but 20mm one just in there. The two connector nuts fit, so it still fits as one kit. So that is all fully usable again. All right, now it's time to put the knuckle back on. Now I don't think, I'm not 100% if taking this knuckle off is going to affect the tracking. I know in some cars it does, but obviously we've got the track rod end that I think probably is going to keep it the same angle. But what you can see here, where I kind of marked it with a bit of a screw, and you can see the rust indentation, should be able to tell me where it fits. So if I just in the first offer this up, and you can kind of see where it used to lie. So I was going to mark it with a pen, but I was quite happy with the rust indentation there, and with the markings just there. So I'm just going to try and get that back up and then get that into place. As with all things, it's going to be a little bit fiddly. It just dropped off on the first, but I might need 2 hands for this. You can't quite see it here, but there's like a little I'll show you. Just here, there's like a little protrusion just there, and that basically goes where the nut is. So just get that all the way around. And that should get up. So you can just about see it meets where the rust mark was and where my scratch was, so that should be hopefully perfectly centered how it was before. I don't want it to drop down. See, it's a bit awkward because I don't want it to drop down. Perfect like that. And it might need some deep sockets for that. Fiddly at first, but once you get a bite on it, it's okay. I just wanted to get it exactly in line with that rust mark there. So, and you need the deep sockets as well. Look at that. Now, I'm not sure what torque setting this should be on, which I'm going to have to look into. But for now, I'm just going to get it tight enough to stay on. We'll double check that before I finish. For now, that is good enough, I think. So, just had to free up some space on my phone, but it missed off the last video that the drive shaft literally just pulls out. As you can see here, when it pulls out, the oil drains out. So I've got a nice little drain just down there. But quite simply, it just pulls out. So a nice simple job. It's no additional work to do this as it is to do everything else I've just done with the housing assembly and the bearing. It literally just pulls out. So I missed that on the video, but yeah, just comes out there, just pulls out. So one reason why that was so easy coming out is you'll see on most tutorial videos there's a retaining clip, which there isn't in these, so this obviously just pulled out and creates a seal. But what's interesting, on the box one I bought, there is. So you just see here this little kind of indentation there. There's normally like a little clip in there, and that basically kind of, as it goes in, you have to twist it in and it kind of be a retaining nut, which is a bit fiddlier to come out. I've seen a few people put some grease on to keep it in place to push it in, but there isn't one on here, and on the replacement or on the original, so that should just push in. I'll show you inside. You can see it has a rubber seal just there. I'll just zoom in. So the seal is by a rubber seal just there, so it kind of just pushes in. And I guess when you put the wheel back on and you put the nut back on, it kind of creates a nice tight seal there. So I'm going to push that back in now. It's going to be a bit fiddly, so I'm going to give it my best shot. Hopefully it goes in as easy as it came out. Give it a twist. almost the seal. I think that's it, I think. Let's get a closer look. As it pushed back in, there's no retaining clip, so just pushes straight back in. You kind of see the plastic seal just there, and that is all back in, I think. We're just putting everything back together. So we've got the ABS and speed sensor going back in. It's all been cleaned up. So it's going to go back in before everything else. That's quite tight going in. So that's all nice back in with the magnet strip there. Hopefully a fiddly job of getting this back in. In. Kind of a two-man job, this. Oh, so need to get the bit of a two-man job. I think I need to get that some sort of leverage just to pull it down, make it a bit easier. Almost. That's it. Done. So it's just a bit awkward. I think you get it kind of almost in position on the corner and just push it in. That seems to have done it. See that? Yes, you kind of, it's a very funny angle because it comes out and then goes up at an angle this way. So I know you can get tools that kind of latch on this and you pull it down, but it's as hard as a one-man job. So get it right on the corner at an angle that it won't go in, and then you just push in here, push, and it goes in. So that's nice and tuckly in. I managed to keep this cover on when I was taking it off, but by some of the forces involved kind of shoot off the side. That's all quite sharp, so that's going to very easily damage this boot here. So I'm just going to see if I can take the pressure off a little bit. Probably should have done this before I put that back on. Not that we damaged. So get these in for now. I'll talk all these up a bit later. Just going to get them in for now. 16 socket, but I haven't got a long socket with me, so I have to use a adjustable hand spanner. All back together. I looked online to look at what all the torque settings are, and this pinch bolt here for the steering arm, where the drive shaft comes in, is going to be 60 Newton meters. So I've got quite a large torque wrench, which is a bit too long to kind of get into these fiddly areas. So I've got a very cheap Draper torque wrench that goes from 10 to 80, I think. So that should be fine for that. So I'm just going to get set up and put a bit of copper grease on, just for future. And hopefully we'll be done fairly soon. So, that's it. Just get it spraying in. What this is now, these are hardened steel bolts and nuts. It's only 60 Newton meters, and this is now, well, this was the bolt that came off it, and obviously it kind of got fairly ruined coming off. So I gave it, you know, I think just kind of forcing it out kind of caused problems there. This got stripped by too much torque, where it doesn't feel like much at all, like it's completely stripped. I was going to leave it out because I thought I just kind of got the wrong nut on it. These are, well, I have to check tomorrow, but the correct nuts, almost without any pressure at all, it's completely destroyed the nuts, and now it's just spinning. So to get that out, I'm going to have to basically hammer it out like I did a few days ago, which takes a while. Doesn't stand up to any force whatsoever, so I'm going to have to go to find out what the correct nut is. I don't understand why it's not holding up to quite minimal torque strength, but I'm going to have to come back to that. So I've stripped that out without any force, and now I'm going to try and force it out. Actually, to get these out, because it just spins, you have to just hammer it. And either just completely collapse the nut, or try and get some purchase on it. Nothing's been easy with this build. This is why I've done this video, to show the reality of these jobs. You see some people and it all goes perfectly, but in reality everything is a nightmare. See, it's just spinning now, so I had to do this with the last one. I left it out because I thought I just got unlucky with the nut and the bolt, but obviously not. But it's all learning. But it's still just spinning. There we go, it's going a bit. That's going to come out, and I'll show you this in a second. So yeah, completely stripped, not completely, the end stripped. I mean, more so, the bolt doesn't seem too bad, but the nut seems more stripped. You see there. So I'm going to go to a local car dealer parts and see if it's just the right steel. I don't think 60 Newton meters is very much torque, but it doesn't seem to be able to do the job, so let's come back to that. Hopefully I've worked out what the problem is. This is a new torque wrench and it wasn't clicking. What I found to solve the problem is that if you undo it completely, unwind it all the way down, way past zero, and then set it, and then it seems to be in working order. Whereas I took it up to my loft for a test and I put it on 20 or 10 and it was basically twisting the metal. So it wasn't clicking. So when you undo it all the way down past 0, back up, and then it's set. Okay, now 60 isn't firm at all, so I think I was over torquing it. So hopefully we'll get a little click on this one, and these nuts should be okay. There you go, that's it. So that's not too much at all, so that's fine. I was going way past that. It's amazing the amount of force you can get in the leverage, but I was kind of waiting for it to feel tight, and then it's just breaking its thread. So that's 60. Just this wasn't set up. So just to show you quickly, what I was doing is undoing it all the way down. I've got a large torque wrench, which was the same as well, all the way down past 0. That seemed to kind of set it, and then back up again, and then it was all in working order. Now my larger one was exactly the same. Even on 20, it was twisting the metal, and I had to do that to kind of get it set. So that's 60, that's all done, and I can do the rest tomorrow when I've got a bit more light. All good. Next part we're going to tighten up is the track rod end. It's in already. I'm just going to make sure it's torqued up correctly. Now, I have found a lot of conflicting information. One video said 75, one said 65, one corrected the 75, said it's actually 35. So for now I'm going to do it for 35, which is, that's already. You can see that, and I'm going to double check that, but at the moment that's 35, and I will double check all these torques at the end.
Thank you, Julian. The other bit that is baffling, is the bit about Trump. People ask me what difference leadership will make. Well, take a look at President Trump. He's shown that sometimes you need that first lead in government to stop the problems, but it's the second time around when you really know how to fix them. It hasn't really fixed anything as things stand. Really expected to, but
Now these should be 9.
they're not fighting against is the actual seizure by force, by illegal force, of a chunk of Europe. And the collaborators in the West, most obviously at the moment, potentially Donald Trump and Nigel Farage's outfit, who are actively enabling it, cheering on our enemy, cheering on experience of their children going to everybody knows that nobody knows. Big in the speech, right? Everybody knows when you can't say that nobody's the name. To spending 2.5% of GDP in the spring. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio are meeting in Saudi Arabia. Washington says the face-to-face talks are a first step to see if Moscow is serious about ending the war in Ukraine. No officials from Kiev were invited. Farming groups have condemned the government's refusal to look again at controversial inheritance tax changes. They met with the Treasury Minister this morning, but say the talks resulted in no movement. A 20% tax will be charged on agricultural land worth more than £1 million from April next year. Tom Bradshaw, president of the National...
The shock strut for the steering knuckle, this should be 75 Newton meters, which is pretty much on it now, like that. That's perfect. Now these brakes should be 105. Like I said, there's been a bit of disparity on the internet about what all these should be, but I think I went to Auto Doc and they corrected 105 Newton meters for this. Let's get an intake. I'm going to get them in first.
Straight into detention. 2 or 3 families took their children out of the school straight away, he said, because they felt his policies were too strict. Most parents have been supportive, and then teachers. I want to hear from parents, I want to hear from teachers, and I want to hear from pupils. If you're of school age now, you need to get...
Brakes, as I said, 105, so... That's that one.
Yeah, you can't. And unless the school gives you absolute support
That's it, 105 both.
to actually identify and isolate the ones who are causing all the trouble, yes, you can't do it.
That's the hub nut. Now, might seem quite obvious, but there's two types of hub nuts. This has got no clip to go through it. So what it would be technically would be a dent lock. So it goes this end. Obviously, this would be the end that gets dent, but I'm not confident that is going to dent enough to go into this divot to lock it. Now, I've seen a lot of videos where people don't put any kind of, they just do it up. They don't put any dent in it. There's no clip or anything. This doesn't hold a clip. So for now, I'm just going to do it up. I might do a bit more research on that, but I mean, I could put a chisel to this and dent it in, but I'm not confident that's going to dent enough to fit in that clip to do its purpose. And then I've just got a damaged nut that's going to be hard to get out. So I'm going to leave that for now. 245. My torque wrench only goes to 210, so what I'm going to do is get it to 210 with this, and then give it with the breaker bar a slight more nudge to get it up to spec. Obviously I've got that Milwaukee gun that I could use, my friend's gun, but I don't want to over torque this. I think it's really key to get the right torque settings. As you saw with the damage of it coming off, I think everything's got to be perfect. See? Be careful on the arch here.
Just one other thing. I don't appreciate the scale of it the head teacher.
And then what I'll do, that's 210.
So a new head teacher comes into a school where teachers are going on strike.
Got 245.
Finance the classroom, not just
You get a slight more of a nudge. As you can see, I've got the screwdriver down there to hold it in place.
Man or woman can turn it around almost immediately. Is that true?
Well, to be honest with you, seeing what this head teacher is doing for 7 days attention,
Yeah.
yeah. Because if it's just a head teacher that can come in and
That's about it.
put in your little details and things like that, then I have to say yeah.
There's no clip to be able to put through this. So what I would technically do is hit down here and there to create a lock, but it's quite thick metal. It's kind of an angle. You can see it's kind of milled an angle. So I have to bend quite a lot of metal and get it right in that divot to lock it, which is going to be very hard to get off. So I'm not going to do that for now. I'm going to come back to that. But for now, that is all done. So that is pretty much done. So I've got to look at the transmission oil, see if I can drain the rest out and fill it up, and then we're done. The drain plug, for some reason I was expecting it to be at the bottom, but it's just at the side here below the drive shaft. So you need a specialist socket for the drain rod. It's obviously just a square, but it's not going to be your standard square, and it's going to be a 3/4 drive to get that off. Now most of it's drained out, but I'm just going to do a complete refill. It's always a messy job, that one. We'll clean up the wheel a little bit before I put the transmission oil in. these are done up to 100, so I'm just going to put them in loosely. Drop the car, and the last thing is the transmission oil, which is different from the gearbox oil. So I'll show you that in a second what that is, and it goes in a different location. So I've got to open up an air vent thing or something on the car to get to the filler, and that takes 2 litres, which I'll show you in a second. Just get these in. So these should be 100. I tend to just do these by the feel of it, and I know when you go to a garage they really torque them up, which is why they get stuck, but technically 100. So I'd normally naturally do it more than that, but that's it. Transmission oil, which is obviously different from the gearbox oil, you have to undo this vent here, and then there should be some sort of filler nut behind that. So I'm going to remove this and show you where that is. Just kind of you lift this up, and it should just pull out hopefully. Pull it out. And then somewhere, might be below the battery tray actually. Damn it. Yes, it's right in there, it's below the battery tray. You have to remove the battery. You can kind of see in there, it's down in there somewhere. So as with all things, a bit of a pain. Right, so this is the filler cap I need to get off. I've seen some people get it off without removing the battery. It's really hard to get your hand down there, but it's quite loose. Just this battery is a nightmare to get out. So I'm going to give that a go. Let's see if I can put a tube in there. I managed to get that out. It's a really, really tight spot for your hands. I'm covered in cuts, but you can just about get in there. You push it down and twist it. So I'm going to get a pipe down there and fill that up. So no need to get the battery out. Get this tube down. This tube is too big for that little hole, so every step is hard work and painful, so I'm going to have to get a little smaller tube to go into that, and then we're done. This is the transmission oil. So as I said before, the transmission oil is different from the gearbox oil, and obviously it's down in there. The pipe I had was too wide, so I ended up getting this little device, another tool, but you know, hey ho, which is a transfer pump, very different from a liquid extractor which you can get, but this is quite a simple basic pump. It draws it out of the oil and then pushes it into the small pipe in there. So the gearbox oil you're going to need is EP75W80 plus. This is recommended for this car. This car takes about 2.1 litres. You only buy it in 2 litres, so I'm going to put in 2 litres. And hopefully all good. Anything that could go wrong today is losing that cap, but I'm going to tape it to my finger. If this goes in, this is all done, apart from maybe clearing the fault code, and that's it. First tube's in. Second tube goes in there. And then should just
maybe over the talk to the Russians think we really want to crane here, or it won't you out. And if we can have this, and you want to go on with your imperialistic desires, if we both do it at the same time, who's going to back behind it?
So this is the shift in the world.
I'm going to do it quite slowly because I can't quite see in there to see if it's going to overflow or anything or any feedback. So slowly.
Yeah.
I want a bit of that. And yeah, I don't think that's speculative at all. I mean, the facts support you. The only defence or the only challenge you get is from the people who say things like, oh, he doesn't really mean it, oh, he doesn't really mean it. I wonder how many Ukrainians today are comforting themselves with the thought of Daily Mail columnists saying, oh, I can tell you that after the next junction, Bill Browder, Sir Bill Browder will be joining us. And, well, I'm just on a personal, never mind a professional level, I am fascinated to learn.
For a cheap tool, this is pretty good. First one done.
His lawyer was murdered in jail, having unearthed an extraordinary fraud being perpetrated by allies of Vladimir Putin, and ever since then, and up to and including being deported from Russia, Bill has been working with the Magnitsky, running the Magnitsky, well, originally of Russian.
I don't want to lose this cap, so I'm going to try this novel method of sellotaping it to my finger, getting it in place, and then turning it. So very, very fiddly that. Well, so it went straight on there. It doesn't really kind of screw on. It's kind of, you push it on, and then it must have some sort of tab or something because it's not like a thread, male-female thread. So that seems to be on. Bent pipe, and then clear the error codes, and that's it. That it's not a screw cap at all. It is just a push type, so you just push it on. It can kind of rotate, but if you're kind of looking for it to kind of tighten up, it won't do. It's a breather cap, so you just push it on. There's a bit of tape on there still, just so I can get to it, but that just pushes on. So now I'm going to put the vent on and do the fault codes, and all done. Really getting that back in, but it does go one directional, so the arrow just facing there. You can see the little clips, but basically it has like little ridges that fit in these kind of cutouts here, so just be mindful when you take it off, it has to go back the set way. And we're just all done. So the last issue is that when you get a faulty bearing, you get an ABS fault. As you saw, the ABS stroke speed sensor is around that bearing, and it creates a fault that we have to clear. Now I haven't used this for a while. My OBD reader's in the corner there. I haven't used this for a while, so it's a cheap one. I think it's going to be go to erase codes.
Hi, if you like this video, please like and subscribe to my daddy's videos.